listening to the Lamptey show. Welcome back. It's been a week or two, but we're back on the air. My name is Joey. This week I'm joined by, this month or this year, I'm joined by Neil.
Hello.
By Imogen.
Hi, Joey.
And by Dom.
Hi there.
Fantastic. So we've got back together for our monthly podcast record. Sorry about that, guys. Because it's nice, isn't it? An FA Cup semi-final. And so we thought we'd get together and sort of say it's nice. I mean, that's not really what we do, is it? Normally we say we've had something good happen, and then me and Paul say that it's all terrible. But I don't think you can really do that this time, can you?
But that was the sort of the myth going on that we saw on the Sky Blues talk that people were mentioning about us coming back, the band getting back together. And one of the rumours was, oh, well, there's nothing bad to talk about, so why would they? But, we talk about good stuff as well, don't we? And this is it. This is the good of the good.
Yeah. Right, so the game itself, we're not doing moments of the week, but we are going to do moments of that game. So I'm going to very slowly sort of fill for time while I find someone who's actually got one to go ahead with first.
Picking at random.
Neil, you.
I think it was, like, I can't say moment. I say the events. Like, that is one of the best things that's happened to us as a club anyway. Just that moment for it to all accumulate in how it did, which was those 2 minutes of utter madness, was just amazing. But I always thought since Hamer's goal at Wembley, that's like my pinnacle. And then even though I wasn't at the match, I was like in a pub in Birmingham surrounded by Wolves fans. That moment of joy, those 2 moments of joy kind of together were just right up there. Like and I didn't feel like I had to suppress it, which was also really good. I could actually enjoy it and jump around. And the best part of it was these 2 Wolves fans who had just seen their team go 2-1 up, walking out the door with 2 minutes to go, singing Wolves are going to Wembley, all this sort of shite. Me, just not happy at all. And then, a minute later, being able to go absolutely mad. And it's just a shame they weren't in the room when I was able to do that. But it was amazing. What a moment. It takes me back, guys, to that Preston game when we got 2 goals in the last minute to win it. Similar.
But isn't it interesting that sort of context is everything? Because like that was massive, because that was that was the closest we'd have had to. Because do you remember the game after that Preston game?
Yeah,
we got battered home by 3-0, didn't we? So that wasn't even for a semi. That was to get into a quarter.
So we had.
It was to get into the semi. It wasn't even a final, and it was the FA Cup doodah. What's it called? The FA
JPC.
the Johnson Paint, whatever it's called. Yeah.
The Northern final.
But at the level that we were at then, that's what success looked like. Whereas now we're like, it's just an FA Cup semi.
Exactly. It's why I can't be a snob about it, though. Like, I can't be like people say, "Oh, look, we're getting happy about." Like, it's all context specific, isn't it? Like at that moment in time, that's all we had. That's all we'd ever had. Of course, you're going to get excited. And I thought that this is brilliant. It's the best it's ever going to be. And over time, another thing becomes the best it's ever going to be because it's in that moment absolutely fantastic.
But it's insane. And I know that it's been longer since those 2 moments. But if you look at our very bottom point, is what? Is it six years ago or is it 7 years ago?
7.
I mean, it's mad, and it's really, really mad. Yeah. That you would have never have foreseen the sort of the level of rise, and it's just fantastic. Speaking of things that you couldn't have foreseen, Dom, did you think for a second that we would even equalise after we went 2-1 behind?
No, yeah, it looked like we'd gone really flat, and we'd had the life sucked out of us because it'd been a pretty good performance up until that point, and Wolves basically scored from like 2 of their only real attacks of quality. You just thought that is an absolute sucker punch. We looked on our feet. We're putting on Tavares, just hoping something's going to stick, something's going to work, and then it actually ends up scoring from basically I think only 2 chances afterwards. But
yeah, it was
in stoppage time. You don't get that much time to have chances, so you better take them like we did. So yeah, I think that was incredible because it just looked like we were done after those 2 Wolves goals. It just looked like we'd been profligate and wasted our opportunity to get into an FA Cup semi-final, and then to turn it around with just summoning those 2 final moments out of nowhere, really. And we were talking on WhatsApp before those goals happened, and we're going like, well, we haven't really beaten that many good teams this season. It's sort of been hard to get a proper read on this side because there's been so many new players. It hasn't felt like it's ever quite got going aside from that run over Christmas. And we haven't really had a good sense of what this team's all about, what it's going to look like when everything kind of sticks together. And that was it's just really good to see that character from the team sort of shine through in those final 3 moments, because we weren't sure that they had it in them.
Anything particularly stood out that was a favourite thing that happened in the game for you?
I suppose not actually the game itself, but sort of the aftermath of it, and sort of going to Monday and listening to like the sort of usual sort of weekly podcasts, and we're being talked about, we're relevant again, and you've even got people like seriously talking about how we might be able to beat Manchester United, which just says so much about like how far this team has come, that we've put ourselves back in the conversation. Because if we go back to those absolute dregs of like 10 years ago, like dropping into League Two, we were just like, our matches just weren't proper events. Like people were losing interest in us, and it just seemed like this eternal downward spiral. And that how it's been able to turn around so quickly. We've gone to Wolves and we've beaten them with goals scored by strikers that we paid somewhere in the region of 12 or 15 million quid for. Like we've like, the transformation is remarkable. Like this is a really expensively assembled team. It's possibly the most expensively assembled team we've ever put together. And it's delivering us that momentum, and it might take us back into the Premier League, but it's certainly put us in the conversation again, and that's it's really sweet to see.
I think given how long it's been since we've got together, I think it would be interesting to talk about Wright and Sims. I think, to be fair, we've probably done ourselves a favour, because I think, especially if Paul would have been about, is we'd have spent 3 to 4 months castigating Ellis Sims for being being a goal shy waste of money. Whereas now we can pretend that nobody would have ever said that, and we'd always said that he would come good no matter what. So we don't worry about that. Imo, I'm going to help you ever so slightly with by going first on moments. Is I want to talk about Casey Palmer. So the moment for me is, I haven't celebrated a goal that didn't happen so heavily since 2014. Was it 2014 with Raheem Sterling for England?
Oh, yeah.
That Palmer, where the keepers come out and they've fucked it up on the edge of their area, and he tried to pass it into the, Like, I'd gone. I was fully gone. I couldn't believe when I looked and it wasn't in. I think the only person that was more surprised was him. Yeah. I don't know to this day still how. And before you go for your particular moment, Imo, I wanted to ask you about how you felt he performed particularly. He seemed to come out with it a tremendous amount of credit. Would you think that was fair?
Yes, we actually, you and I talked about this the previous game, and I thought that Palmer was the only one that came out of it with any particular dignity. Was it the previous game? One of the previous. They all sort of blur into one. They're not the FA Cup, so I don't really care about them. But I had been at the game and thought that Palmer came out of it looking like he had ideas, and like he was the one moving about the pitch with the most industry. And you said you thought he was complete shite, basically. I
think it was probably more nuanced than that.
No, I don't. I think that you may have used more words, but I don't think the nuance was there.
You're right. That does sound like me, so that's fair enough.
This game was interesting. We were talking about him quite a lot in the first half, in that when he had space on the ball, when he managed to get himself free from his marker, he looked very dangerous and he knew what he was doing. He wasn't hesitant about what his next step was. But they had people on him all the time, and he was just that pace too slow, especially in the first half. In the second half, he kind of built up to it a bit, but it did feel like he took a while to warm up to the pace of the Premier League. And it wasn't actually that goal that I was on my feet for. It was the more obvious Sims one, because we were down the other end, the other end from the fun end. So we were level with the where we were shooting the first half. And the Sims miss, we just thought, how is that even possible? We didn't know at the time that Bidwell would have been offside. And then the Van Avaak one that followed it, it was just inexplicable how he missed it. And of course, you're sitting there at the end of the first half thinking, we've used up all our chances. There's no way they're not going to come. That's it now. We've had our allotted time. There's no way they're going to come back and let us back into the game. But the moment had to be after the celebrations of the third goal, holding on to everyone next to us, just willing that whistle to go. And it felt like a hell of a lot longer than it did when I rewatched it. Well, I've watched it more than once on TV.
You're not alone.
And when you watch it back and you know the result, it's barely any time at all. I swear to God, it was hours of my life waiting for that. Fabio Tavares running down with the ball right at the very end, I thought was running through treacle. I was like, what's he doing? Yeah. Where's he going with this? Go faster. That had to be the moment when the final whistle actually went. It was inexplicable how we managed to win that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really tricky because I want you to sort of talk about your experience at the game, right? I don't know how much kind of tactical analysis it bears because...
Good job you're asking me then, isn't it?
Well, there's a handful of things. So on the negative side, I'm really surprised we didn't do something more proactively to stop Aït-Nouri, who I just thought from the moment the game started looked like he was causing us problems. And then he got booked so early, but we never really tried to do anything about that either. We didn't try and
counter on that. God, he's quick though, isn't he?
He's quick, yeah, but Van Avaak's not bad either. And then saying that,
good point, yeah.
But that, I just wondered whether there was something that could be done there. But that, secondly, can you analyse a game tactically where you've got what was it? Was it? I think you sent it, Dom. Was our XG 4.4 on about 80 minutes?
Our full time, our XG was really high.
I think it was over 5 by the time of the end of the game.
But I think if you look at it, Sims' first goal, Sims' 2 goals, basically he couldn't miss them. So that's going to get you maybe 6 or 7, 0.6, 0.7 each. And then the fact that Sims had that miss from earlier, which would have been 0.8 XG, but it would have bbeen ruled out if he put it in the net. So that went to our total.
I didn't realise that until now.
I was saying that the first one was handball and it wasn't ruled out. So, you never 100%.
Yeah.
Not clear and obvious, Joey. Come on.
Let's not get started on that. The point that I'm trying to make is that ultimately, is there much worth in trying to analyse a game tactically that we almost lost with a 5 XG, but that we actually won? Surely the thing is, we got it right, didn't we?
I think look at the performance as a whole. I mean, over the last few years, I've been quite used to us feeling superior to most teams that we play. Not all of them, obviously. I went into this game absolutely certain that we would be inferior, that we wouldn't be able to kind of compete. But I think pound for pound, having watched it back a couple of times in sort of its entirety, it was an absolute competition between two teams. They didn't outplay us. I mean, they had individuals who were clearly a step ahead of what we had. I think Aït-Nouri surprised me. I knew he was good, but I thought individually he had a lot about him. But I just think the fact that I know they didn't have all their players up, but we could go into that match and play
I think that's
as well as we did. What's that, sorry?
I think that's to say, I know they didn't have all of their players, I think is generous. They'd got kids off the street.
They didn't have any strikers.
By the end.
Yes. Yeah, still. No, I can't go there. But no, it was just great.
But I still think, sorry to cut you off, I still think, even though that's true about being so heavily depleted, is that they are able to sign players for 25, 30 million quid who are on loan at different clubs at the minute. Do you know what I mean? It's not even if it is their like third string team, it's still completely night and day in terms of level playing field, isn't it? So it's fair enough.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I listened to the Wolves fancast, which is definitely worth a listen. I'd highly recommend it. Perhaps only for this week. And they said, look, I went into this game thinking, look, even if we put the B team, even if we put the B team on, we're going to smack them, but we didn't. I mean, it was just so disappointing. And
uncanny. That's brilliant.
Thank you. So they clearly thought, even with all of those injuries, that we wouldn't be a problem. And I have a feeling, it seemed to me from the first 15, 20 minutes that the Wolves bench had thought the same thing, because they seemed surprised, and we were all very surprised, I think, at how attacking we were and how ready we were to match them for pace and not just to sit back and wait. The first 5 minutes were a bit dicey, and then after that we just thought, fuck it, let's just go for this, and we really did. I was so impressed by us.
Well, so the other thing that I think was a huge surprise that I don't think it was deliberate, but what a fantastic thing to happen was even ITV listed the starting lineup as Lamptey playing dead in the middle of a back three. And I think all of that, and you can only do guesswork, can't you? But again, all of this like manic iPad work in the first 15 minutes from O'Neill, I think was him saying, they're not playing a back three and you've got to hit that right back. That's which fair play to him, because that nearly was what won them the game to some extent, wasn't it? Was identifying that weak link and trying to hit it, but that ultimately it didn't, thank God. So I think we really did surprise them in more ways than one. And I think in some ways there was a sort of, that we had created ourselves, but I think that threw them off guard. Like, I think they weren't expecting us to come out with the back four. I don't know about you. I wasn't expecting us to come out with the back four.
No. Well, it felt a little bit like the Leeds situation where we went there and we weren't sure how we were going to set up there, but he did something which was unusual, and yet pound for pound, every player in every position made sense. Like I can see why he'd want to do that, especially away, but it just didn't feel, on the face of it, like it feels defensive in a way where you've kind of got like a full back on right, two full backs on the pitch and all that sort of stuff on the right hand side, but it didn't feel defensive at all. It felt like we had a lot of a lot of attack about us. I was really impressed with the way that we were able to cause them problems.
I also think it's got to put and I know that I said that we wouldn't do a lot of tactical analysis, and we're doing tactical analysis, but we'll probably move on from this unless anybody else has got anything else to say. I do think that performance has got to be the final nail in the coffin for the three at the back, surely to God. Because
Mark still loves it, but I agree. I definitely agree. But I think he's keen with the players we've got to find a way sometimes.
But this is what's odd, is that ultimately the reason that we went to the three in the back when we did was because it suited the players that we'd got then. Whereas he's just spent 8 million quid on a striker who's very, very obviously better suited to the left side. And so if he's going to move to three at the back, I'm just not sure that... I don't think Sims operates as well when there's someone so close to him. I don't think Wright operates as well as when he's got more space and he can cut inside and he's closer to O'Hare. And like, I think that when he's fit, the player that you want to accommodate more than anybody else is Sakamoto for me. We probably, this is again a sort of a look back at some of the season, but I don't know about you guys, but I'm fully in love with Sakamoto. I just think he's been absolutely magnificent for us. And so I don't know if we go back to three at the back, there's no place for Wright in his ideal position. There's probably no place for Sakamoto in his ideal position, although he could, be effective to an extent from right wing back. And so it's the same reason we moved to three at the back when we did a few years ago. This is now the sensible move commensurately, isn't it, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, all the details there. Sorry, Dom.
Yeah, so I suppose the only thing at the moment is that we're so thin on numbers in like attacking positions that, considering we're now going to have like a manic run of fixtures over April, we're kind of one injury away from not being able to play a 4-2-3-1 at all if we lose like any more of those attacking players. And considering that Palmer's enjoying a really good run of fitness when he's someone who doesn't usually stay fit for long, I think it's going to be useful to have that three at the back, just sitting in Mark Robbins' back pocket to have over the running, because that next month's going to be absolutely brutal for fixtures and keeping players fit and fresh.
Yeah, very much so. Right, okay. Imogen, as our vibes correspondent, do you want to pick up and sort of do the less boring stuff around kind of what it felt like and how it compared to the other big, nights of our lives?
Gladly. It was a really happy, joyful day all the way through. I didn't have any of the nerves that we'd had at our previous big occasions. And I think after the emotional trauma of the match that shall not be named in May, I had to have a long talk with myself and say, you can't let football affect you like this. You're a grown woman with gainful employment. So I thought, you know what, let's just have fun. We're going to get smashed about 5 or 6-0, but we'll have a nice time. It's a nice day out. It's a local derby. There's bound to be a fight, and it'll just be something to enjoy, and then we can have a break from the league and then go back to focusing on finishing 7th. But
I think, just quickly, did you think it would be as resounding as 5 or okay?
Yeah, I did. I went to Watford the weekend before, and we were just appalling the first 45. I have no idea how we won that game. We just looked completely out of sorts. I've had a bubbling theory for the last 10 or no, not 10 games, so maybe the last 5 games, that there is unrest in the camp. I was convinced that there's been some sort of falling out. People are unhappy. A bit like my prediction that Gyökeres wouldn't be very good. It hasn't seemed to have petered out the way I thought that it would. But
is that your prediction that he would flop at Sporting? Is that what?
No. I mean, I'd worked out by the time he left. I worked out he was all right.
Okay, you got there in the end.
No, not quite that juice. But yeah, it felt like I don't know. It just didn't have the same feeling as it had done the previous season. It didn't feel like an inevitability that we were going to really fight for playoffs. So the fact that we got as far in the FA Cup was just, it felt like a nice relief rather than a distraction from the league. And so I think we were pretty, we felt like there wasn't really anything riding on it. I think the atmosphere in the ground was fantastic. Wolves have got a very vocal fan base, and it felt like both teams were really up for it. And I guess that for Wolves, I mean, okay, yeah, they saw it as a bye, right? They were going to get to the semis automatically. But they're pretty happy with the way that their season has panned out.
Good, haven't they?
Yeah. And okay, yeah, they've had a lot of injuries, but they're in no danger really of going down. They could have a really strong season. They could still look for a really strong top half finish. So this would be sort of the icing on the cake for them. Which is why I was so surprised at the way that we set up, as we were talking about the fact that we were so attacking. I have to say, I know I have been quite a vocal naysayer of Mr. Benjamin Sheaf. He was sublime on Saturday. I don't know if it came across on TV, but he just oozed class. He was better than all of that midfield. Of their midfield. He is just stunning the way that he anticipated the play. He was always a step ahead. The ball stuck to his foot. It was a masterclass. It was so good. Less interesting was his interview on Monday Night Football that I know that we all listened to. Thank fuck he's talented at football, because that was dry.
Well, look, so for the benefit of the listeners, is that this has been a topic of conversation this week amongst us to some extent. Is I mentioned that I remember, I think it was him and Bidwell roomed together, and I'm obsessed with them videos that they do in like pre-season where it's like roommates and they're like 8 minutes and they ask them I adore anything like that. I don't think we've recorded since, I think the last time we recorded, funnily enough, was the video with them at the Mega Bowl.
Oh, yes.
Me and you, Neil, absolutely obsessed over. I've watched that more than the highlights of this game, which I'm watching, right? And the Sheaf, who by this time had sort of established himself as a great signing and whatever else. He was the only time that I'd seen him enthusiastic in an interview was when he was talking about Marvel films, which are not bad. I'm not having a go at Marvel films, but it does say a lot about the chap's temperament. What was really funny was on the club's YouTube is they got a kind of supercut of Ben Sheaf Wolves preview and Mark Robbins Wolves preview, where all of the questions had come from Clive, and it was like a sort of like a very postmodern sort of exercise in banality study. Clive was like, will it be, with them being a Premier League side, will it be interesting to test yourself against them? And Sheaf would be like, absolutely, yeah, because we want to be at that level. You just like, so yeah, we don't want to criticize the guy in any way, but there was but I don't think he'd be the first person that I would go to for an interview. Imo, before you carry on, you said, I don't know whether it translated to TV. Neil, would you say that it translated to TV, the quality of Sheaf's performance?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. He has a glide about him, and I couldn't really hear the commentary, but when I watched it back, they noticed, the neutrals noticed what he was doing in that game, and that's what you want, isn't it? You want people who aren't like us, who have got a vested interest in these players and probably see them a little bit differently. I'm always keen. That's one of my little hobbies, actually, just searching Twitter for our players to see what neutral. I used to do it with Hamer and Gyökeres. It's a little bit hard with Sakamoto because apparently that's got a familiar name in Japan, so you can't really find much information about him. But I know you just search for Sheaf and you've got plenty of people recognising his quality, Premier League player, all that sort of stuff. So absolutely.
Dom?
Yeah,
Sheaf's performance stand out?
Yeah, I thought he was fantastic. I thought he was, I think if you were picking one player to sort of plug and play into the Premier League from our team, from that game, he really stood out. I think to a lesser extent, I'd say Sims. I thought that was probably his best game for us. Just the way he led the line and battled the centre backs. I think it's the first game that I sort of remember in quite a while where his control, Sims' control just looked really comfortable, really automatic. He wasn't getting away from him. I think you contrast that performance from Sims to what he produced against West Brom about 2 weeks earlier, where the ball was just flying off his foot. It's just remarkable. I really hope that that you can get that consistently out of Sims, because if he does that week in, week out, he's going to score more consistently. He's going to make a really big difference to his team. He's going to be that sort of complete striker figure up front that Mark Robbins has really been keen to have throughout his time for us, whether that's been McNulty, when he started really linking the play towards the end of that League Two season. Who we have? We tried that with Bakayoko in League One. Didn't always work. We were sort of hoping that would come through, and sort of the combination of Biamu and Godin sort of worked to an extent in League One. And then Gyökeres was the striker Robbins has been dreaming of, and you can sort of see, and he's been trying to put that work in with Sims to make him a more complete rounded player, because I think before he came with us, he was someone who was much more comfortable just running off the shoulder of defenders and just trying to sort of explode into the final third. And I think that's possibly why it's been a bit of a painful process with Sims, is he's been trying to sort of round off his game, and really hope that performance against Wolves is a sign of what can be sustained, because that was really impressive battling with Premier League centre backs and holding up play and bringing others in. That was a really complete performance, topped off with 2 really good sort of poachers, finishes, being in the right place, right time.
Some good moments, I thought. What Sims moments specifically, like obviously he missed that chance, like that open goal, and you could imagine him sort of wilting, like the version that we've seen of Sims wilting. But his very next involvement in that match was to take the ball, drive on, and then roll it in for Van Avaak, which is just like, okay, this is more like it. This is, this is what you just don't let that get to you. Just keep going. And then also, like, you see, obviously he's going to celebrate, but he doesn't celebrate that much. But his celebrations for the goal were slightly different. And then at the end, you've got Haji Wright pointing to him, making sure that everybody were giving him the credit. It's like all these little moments that are building up to, okay, this might be the changing point. And the other thing, I'm going to throw this stat out there, he's in the top 10 scorers in Europe in 2024. Like, that's how many goals he's got. So all these things coming together to hopefully turning into somebody who isn't going to wilt. It's somebody who's now starting to believe in himself. And, the first touch is probably not going to be brilliant for his entire career. I just don't think that's something he's got in his wheelhouse. But he's got other stuff going for him. And, like, if he starts to find the right positions, and he's got a good shot, if he starts to get in positions where he can start to shoot a bit more, he could be the player that we want him to be. But Wolves game was the one where I was like, okay, there's some changing moments here. These are things that I haven't seen from him yet, and it was really good to see.
Very quickly on Sims and Wright, a bit of stat fun. I know that we're sort of drifting away from what was originally Sheaf and the game, but again, in the context of having not recorded for a good long while, it's a bit of fun maybe. Does anyone have a guess? Wright and Sims now have roughly the same minutes per goal number as each other. Does anyone hazard a guess at what that might be?
I feel like I've seen this. I've done a lot of work on it.
So I know this is a very obvious thing to say, but if it's 180, that means the average a goal every 2 games, which I guess is sort of like, you're happy with.
Yeah. Is it like 200? Because they've got, what's it now, 14 and 15. So that's
Any advance on 200?
Right, I'm going to say 192.
I'm going to say 187.
So it's between 160 and 170 for both of them. So they're both now, since they've started, for 2 players that I don't think people would look at as being resoundingly successful seasons thus far, albeit in the context of the fact that the first half was not what you would maybe want it to be and has got much better as the season has gone on, is even within that framework that I think most people would find acceptable. If you would have said that you've got 2 strikers that are averaging a goal every 2, better than a goal every 2 games, you would have called that a good season right up top for 2 fairly young strikers, one coming from abroad and one that's, in a very difficult circumstance. And I think it's a weird one where, and I know that, we are probably more, liable for it than most, but that weirdly you could almost do with not judging a player until they've left a club rather than keep assessing how they're doing game on game or after 10 weeks or after 10 games or whatever. Because, like, when you, in the cold light of day, now that Sims has started scoring, when you think about the fact that for much of the season, he's had to be in and out with Godden, or he's had to be in 2 different formations. He's had the difficulty of, I think, sort of, can you imagine having imagined your career? You've come through Everton's academy. You probably think you'll get into Everton's first team, and you hit a period where they can't score goals and they've got no backup strikers and they sell you anyway. Like, maybe that has a big impact on your mentality. Maybe that has maybe you take some time to sort of, you've moved to a new city, you're 23 or whatever. Like, maybe there is a dent in what you are and what you do. And the fact that he's now come so sort of resoundingly out of that period as quickly as he has, I just think is really terrific. You've just got to hope it carries on to whatever extent it can carry on. But I think in terms of his overall play, I think his hold-up play has been really good for about 3 or 4 months now, hasn't it? I just think that sometimes the goals haven't followed it, but that now they're streaming in, and I'm just really pleased for him.
Yeah, I think his work rate has been really impressive, and he always struck me throughout the season as someone that wants to work hard. He just wasn't getting anything out of it. And other than really the QPR away game, he hadn't really struck me as someone that we could rely on it as a regular first choice. I am really glad that you did qualify that he was sold by Everton, because if anyone who listens to the Totally Football Show, apparently he's on loan, and Dyche could recall him anytime. Three different people.
Yeah. This is fabulous. I
was listening to it, and when you just doubt yourself, I was like, oh, have I been living a lie this entire season?
No one's so meticulous as well.
Well, they obviously
unusual.
They didn't care, and they've already decided that we're not going to win the semi-final.
Well, they're saying that.
I think that's a bold call, frankly.
The last time that I can remember them not being meticulous about their research was when they suggested that when we had dispensed with, I imagine, who came before Presti?
Oh, hang on, it was Robbers, wasn't it?
Before we, in fact, maybe either way, we had dispensed with the manager. Then we had recorded a podcast where we had suggested that our first choice was Zdeněk Zeman, and I think God knows how it got there. But then on that next Guardian Weekly podcast, such as it was at the time, they had said that there was a rumour that it would be Zeman that we was taking back over, that I think could have only possibly have originated from us, but I don't know how. I don't know how that sausage making machine creates that particular sausage. But yeah, so maybe this is the thing, because I don't know the ins and outs of Brighton or whatever. Every time they're like, Simon Adingra has played for the Ivory Coast, if you're a Brighton fan, they're like, he's playing for South Africa, come on. Maybe they don't know anything. I'm just like, well, it seems they're talking confidently. I suppose it's like with us. There's probably people shouting this now going like, you don't know.
There will be something in this podcast where we have got it horrendously wrong, and not just opinion wrong, fact wrong. And what are you going to do? But they get paid for this. I that's my difference. They're getting paid for it. We're allowed to
actual job.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, exactly. So look, to round things off to where we started from with Sheaf, Paul texted me after game and said that he thought it was his best game ever.
Yeah, I don't like to agree with Paul, but yet again, here I am.
It's really hard to not agree. I just thought he was, like you say, I thought there was two things. One, he mopped everything up. But secondly, I thought it was the game more than any other that I've seen where he seemed like a leader on the pitch much more than any other. I don't know if you remember, there was a moment in the first half where he charged out of very, very deep position in a really, really good counter-attack, and him and Palmer miscommunicated on a pass that actually fucked up a thing. But that Sheaf was like, you fucked that up. Like, Sheaf was just like, you've messed that up. And I just, and as well as Palmer, who you don't normally see wilt, Palmer was sort of like, yeah, okay. I looked at it, I was like, I'm not really sure you did. But I love the fact, at the very least, that Sheaf had got the authority over what is someone that is quite a big character, that kind of, that's like Doyle levels. And I know that we've joked about Doyle's kind of perceived impact from off the pitch, but that having spoken to Grimmer and Davis and whatever else, and they've been like, Doyle is the best player that I've ever played with. Maybe a bit of that goes a long way. Before the very final thing before I throw back, just quickly on Sims, because I've remembered it. The other thing that I thought was really funny was, did anyone watch the last City Unseen that was almost 5 times longer than most City Unseens? Yeah. Did anyone notice the Casey Palmer behind the camera joking about Sims never smiling?
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Right. So I know that I'm prone to reading too much into things, but previously Sims wasn't allowed on camera because he was like persona non grata. He doesn't play Mario Kart or whatever. This is his Didsy moment, as far as I'm concerned. Like, he's now scored enough goals that this kind of Iceman exterior, like even Gyökeres didn't get that sort of treatment. He was like an island, wasn't he? Whereas now, like, Sims is broken through, like, because he's scoring goals. It's not that he's an outcast. He's now choosing to sit outside.
Yeah.
And he's been let out on interviews as well.
I know.
Too.
And it's jarring. He's from Oldham, isn't he? It's jarring that he's not a Scouser.
Yeah, I think he came through Man City.
Yeah, he did. There's a famous photo of him with Cole Palmer, isn't there? Just sat on Cole Palmer. Obviously,
I didn't realise that.
There is. I'll share it. It's a great photo. He's got a really interesting approach to interviews, and it's just a little mannerism where he basically cuts his answer short, like 50% of the way through where he'd normally expect it to be. He's like, is there more to come here? And he keeps doing it. I'm like, oh, wow. Great. Be like that.
This is another thing that I'm going to revisit from a few months ago. I think he's unbelievable looking, by the way. Sims. I think he's absolute. I think if I could sort of remodel how I would look, I think that is exactly like tall, that sort of hair and beard combo.
Oh, the hair is phenomenal.
The hair is absolutely out of this world. But also, it's the sort of demeanour of constant disinterest, like constant detachment from everything. Is the whole package is just absolutely dreamy as far as I'm concerned. But I guess that isn't the key element here. So Sheaf is
brilliant.
It's gorgeous.
I just, like, a lot of people say, oh, he doesn't seem too happy. I don't want him to be happy. I want him to score a goal and look miserable. I just love the idea of somebody not giving a monkeys, not bowing down to what you're supposed to do, or mostly, not giving a crap about, like, Mario Kart. Like, let the others have their school time fun, and that's what they enjoy, and that's all them. He's like, well, I'm just going to do my own stuff. I'll just, I'll score a goal and I'll smirk. And it's like, that's fine. That's all. Yeah,
Gyökeres was miserable the entire season and didn't cause him any problems, did it? Yeah.
I just think, I think you need your striker to be a bit of a dickhead.
Agreed.
I think this is ultimately why Wright operates a lot better. I know this is like a sort of daft point, but I do really mean it. I think, like, Wright, strength-wise, just very basic physical strength, which I know isn't the be-all and end-all, I think has got the physical beating of most opponents. Am I misreading that, or do you think that's a kind of a reasonable assessment?
It's reasonable, yep.
But I don't think he dominates opponents on a regular basis at all. Just don't think it's... And I think all that is it's mentality, isn't it? And it's aggression. I just think he must be a nice guy, or that certainly on the pitch is that he doesn't feel comfortable doing that horrible stuff. And that's fine as well, because there's loads of ways to be good on a pitch. Like, you don't need to do it. I think as a central striker, I think the opponent that you're up against more often than not is going to be really naturally aggressive, because I think naturally aggressive footballers gravitate towards centre-back, because it's the area of the pitch where you can, or maybe like central defensive midfield. And so I think you probably need a bit of that back in you, so that either you can combat it or you can dominate them in the same way that kind of puts them on their ass. And Gyökeres was mean. Gyökeres was like, one, he could take all of the physical abuse and it never bothered him. But also, he wouldn't give a fuck. He just didn't give a fuck about elbows and whatever being where they needed to be. Wright isn't that same sort of guy. I think Sims has got a bit of that about him. Not in a horrible way, but that he's got a bit of kind of, that it's my ball and I'm winning it. And that we're joking about the detachment. But like, I think there's a bit of him that's just like, I'm not bothered. That's my goal. That's what I want, really.
I hope he gets there, because Mark said exactly the same. He was like, once he realises how just strong he is and how much of a handful he can be, he's going to be a really good player. And I think, there's a passiveness about him sometimes, or there has been, which you're not exerting yourself in the way that you would expect somebody who's 6'3" to do. So, once he gets that grit, I think, he's definitely got the capability to do that.
But I think it's also arrogance or confidence, or however you'd put it, isn't it? which I think is what's coming through now. I think you sort of you push on and you make them moves and you go for certain balls in certain ways because you think you're better or you're going to win it or whatever. And so much of it is mentality at that level, isn't it? Sorry, I keep saying, Imo, that you're going to finish, but clearly, you know, we've been away for so long that there is much to talk about. Sheaf is fabulous. Sims is fabulous. Wright is fabulous. What else is good?
Can we talk about Van Avaak? Because first half of the season, I think I would have had him down as my player of the season. I thought he had a really huge impact coming in, and his pace, his skill, particularly when he was linking up with Sakamoto, I thought down that side was just dynamite to watch. They were really effective. And then something went awry. I don't know whether it was Sakamoto's injury. It seemed to be, but he just he seemed a bit lethargic. Like he didn't really have any idea when he was on the ball. He wasn't very well placed defensively. I mean, West Brom, we touched on briefly earlier, was an awful game all round. I thought, looked particularly weak that day. But again, he looked great on Saturday. His pace was back, and he was much more willing. Seeing him one-on-one with a goalkeeper was weird, actually, to see him in that position, and perhaps he missed because he wasn't used to being there. It seemed to sort of just surprise him a bit that he'd reach there that quickly and he'd run out of ground to do anything with the ball. But I thought he looked really back to his best, almost. Actually, no, I think he was back to his best on that day, and I hope that he can replicate that in the league, because I think we've been missing it down that side. I don't know how you have been feeling about him this season.
I guess the question is then, so given that I guess his starting position was so much more further up the pitch, is that a permanent home that you see for him? Or do you think that is, because I agree with you, I think the relationship that he built up with Sakamoto was really, I think it's probably rare as a right back that you'll find a right winger so happy to do so much dog work for you when you so clearly want to get up the pitch. And I wonder whether sometimes he's been let down a little bit by whoever it is that's in front of him that isn't so active. But then the question, much as it is with Trent, who I find very interesting, is, well, maybe are you a right back? I think the answer is yes. I think he is. I just think he could do with a bit more protection, be that from either a more competent defensive central midfielder or from someone in front of him. Dom, you're sort of nodding, roughly speaking. Is that because?
Yeah,
do you have an opinion?
I think he's very much right back. I thought one of the big things about why we made change to a back four a success in the first place was Van Avaak's ability to cover with his pace, and that allowed everyone to push up the pitch, and that provided us with that backstop, which we'd really been struggling for up until then. There was those back-to-back games against West Brom and Preston where McFadden just got absolutely burned for pace and shuffled him to the side, but that was such a big thing, enabling us to play a high line. There's a few games where it's just like teams are getting in behind, but Van Avaak was just absolutely lightning, just catching up to wingers, just appearing out of nowhere. I think that's a huge thing. I think my main issue with Van Avaak is the going forward bit, where he's got such explosiveness to him. He can get in such good positions, but I think the actual technique with the final ball, that willingness to take on crosses a little bit earlier, I think he's a little bit hesitant when he gets into those final third areas. And it was only against Plymouth where he finally showed that explosiveness in the final position, where he got into a good position down the right wing and he just bombed to the touchline and pulled it back for Wright to score there, albeit the ball did go out of play. But we'll forget about that detail. But I think that's
I agree.
Yeah, that's what he should be doing more often. I think there's a few times where he can get like stood up by opposing defenders, and he's not quite finding that turn of pace, or he's just letting moments pass him by slightly. So I think he still needs to. I think that decision making when it comes to the final third needs improvement, but I would expect to see him drop back to right back over the run in. It did feel like a bit of a one-off against Wolves, although the question is, who do you put on the right wing in his stead with Sakamoto out?
Well, the other question very quickly, I guess, is in terms of the wing positions, so you're right, is who would you put there otherwise? The other question is, when we go into next season, we've got this massive weight of talent on the left-hand side and nothing on the right-hand side. I haven't seen Ephron Mason-Clark yet. I gather he's terrific, and he's certainly having a great season numbers-wise, Dom. Are you up on him much at all? Could he be convinced to swap sides?
I sort of don't see a reason why we couldn't fit him in on the right side. I also wonder whether there's sort of a shout for playing Mason Clark in the O'Hare position. I think why he's got that, why he likes to take players on and likes to burst into scoring positions from wide areas. I think what's so good about Mason Clark is he's got a level of thoughtfulness on the ball where he'll get into good positions at times and he'll just pause the size up his options, and he's just got that skill to burst past players or pick a pass. And he's so I think he's someone who could play all across that front line, even if he's been really effective for Peterborough over the past 18 months playing on the left. I think he could play either side. It's kind of one of those where I think talented players kind of find a way to make it work, and he's someone who should be of that level.
Fair dues. So yeah, Milan, good game, I would say. Imo, from there?
Well, I guess the biggest the element that people seem to be most interested in is ball boy gate. So maybe we should touch on Mr. Robbins' behaviour.
I've still not seen it.
There's not much to see.
Well, I'm not. So it would be helpful for me and for you to assume that there are others out there who have not seen it in its entirety. Obviously, I'm aware of what's been said about it and the apology and whatever, but I don't actually know what happened.
So we were going into injury time, and the ball goes out by the dugout, and Bidwell goes to get the ball for the throw in, and you can see on the camera that Bidwell is frustrated by something off camera, namely the ball boy not providing him with the ball. There's a bit of a delay. Eventually, Bidwell goes and gets the ball himself, throws the ball in, resulting from which we score. And Robbins is caught running from. He turns his back to the pitch, runs round the side of the dugout, squats, and shakes his fist, gets up, walks back towards with it facing the pitch, decides against it, turns back again, does another little another little fist bump there, very quietly. then he decides to go and celebrate with the rest of his team. Obviously, being on the other side of the pitch, we didn't see any of this. I thought it was a bit of a non-event, really. It was quite amusing, considering Robbins doesn't really do much at any point in his life, whether on the pitch or in interviews, it was quite nice to see him, move. But I didn't think too much of it until we saw the Gary O'Neill tears in his eyes. It's disgusting.
I couldn't bring myself to watch that interview. I was like, it's just going to annoy me. So I knew I used the word disgusting. I was like, this is fucking ridiculous.
I watched it and it was like a car crash.
God.
Yeah, it was quite astonishing, his level of disconnection from reality. But as we were talking about before we started recording, it was Mourinho-esque. He needed anything to deflect away from his their utter capitulation in the final few minutes. But and Robins apologised afterwards. I thought a bit too much, to be honest. I didn't really think he needed to say all that, but he did. And
best part of it, sorry to interrupt, is that obviously in the interview that he did immediately after the game with CWR, he was saying how much he enjoyed it. I thought, it was nice to give it a little bit of a go back. I enjoyed that a lot. And then it's like,
maybe he was cowed by O'Neill having to have a stern word with him after his and tell him what a terrible human being he was.
But it's very difficult because you end up sounding like Jim Davidson if you say anything like this. But I understand why he's apologised, because he's sensible enough to know that the correct thing to do to stop it being a conversational point is to apologise. But I just think the ball boys did something. I know they're a kid, but they're still they've made a decision to do a certain thing. How big a deal is it? Somebody said that the ball boy was crying, and you're like, well, what?
Crying like the Eden Hazard boy.
Yeah, exactly.
It might be character forming for him, or I don't think it's the end of the world. I think as well is that it's all right. The other thing that I keep thinking about him and Vivash is I sort of love the fact that they're baddies, aren't they? They're not. If this was wrestling,
squeaky, yeah.
If
they are, they had this. Then they had quite a strange spiritual hug at the end, which was endearing. And then we lost Dennis, which was it's a shame, and it was a very odd point in time to leave. Do we not think?
Yeah.
Why are we letting him go now?
Well, because I guess it's not a case of letting him go. It's just if you're offered a brilliant job at a certain point, then I suppose you go for it, don't you?
Sure, but it's still an odd.
When's the US season start? Does that start?
It's already started. It started about 2 weeks ago.
But also, isn't there so I don't want to put 2 and 2 together and make 5, but he's Trinidadian, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
they said it's because it's closer to home.
Yeah, so I didn't realise that, but you just guessed that, it's the same as, I don't know if you've listened to, do you ever listen to Under the Cosh, that podcast with John Parkin and Chris Brown? It's a real shame, that podcast, because I find the hosts and presenters, much as people that listen to this podcast, I assume do, absolutely reprehensible, but the guests are usually... The thing that they do brilliantly is picking guests that are full of insight and good stories. So as an example, if you've not listened to it, you can start off by listening to Ben Turner's. Ben Turner, I don't know if, Dom, you're nodding like you've heard a few of these before. Have you listened to it? No, okay. So they interview ex-footballers, but I think their niche is the fact that they consider themselves to be sort of ever so slightly left field in terms of footballer stock. And they invite on guests who they feel have got something ever so slightly more interesting to say than just, we played the game and I enjoyed it or whatever. And they have quite good guests on. Ben Turner's fantastic. Ben Turner talks about having met up with Michael McIndoe one time, and that when he met up with Michael McIndoe, he got a bulletproof vest on and he was asking Ben Turner for further investment.
Oh my God.
Have you heard it?
No.
Oh, okay. So the podcast is quite good in terms of that. But having listened to quite a lot of those podcasts, is what you realise is that you don't give footballers enough credit for how difficult sort of football life is. Do you know what I mean? Is that like it's tricky.
What, like the vast swathes of empty time and you can't really do anything. You're just sort of waiting for training.
Yeah, and kind of all of the bits that you don't really think about in terms of like Jason McAteer went to Tranmere at the end of his career, but that he did it for basically no money because he just wanted to be a bit closer to home. And so with Lawrence is that like you might look at it and think it's difficult because you're so entrenched in sky blue sort of adoration. You kind of think, well, why would he go now or whatever? But he might have spent the last 3 years being like, I wish I could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Robbins did say earlier in the season, not that long ago, he was talking about the toll that it takes on his staff. There aren't many people working for him compared to other championship clubs, and the pressure and the stress that they undergo is enormous. And he said, I can't remember why he was talking about it. Had someone else left recently?
No, there's been a couple of people leave this season, hasn't there?
Yeah.
So I can't think. It's a classic meeting. Say again.
Yes, it was. It was one of the medical team. Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
I think that's why he was talking about it. And the staff that he does have advertises their pre-match thoughts on WhatsApp for the world to see. So, it's a difficult job.
I just think generally, like, it's everybody. The more I've watched football, like we've all watched loads of football over the years, but like the more I kind of try and avoid the pantomime side of it. Certainly when it comes to like people making decisions about their career, like you think about it, we're the first, or we as fans are the first to kind of turn on a player and suddenly think, well, we don't want you anymore kind of approach to the life. So if an opportunity comes up why wouldn't they take a chance on another job or another role? Is it as deep as, oh my God, you're being, you've walked away from this, you're disloyal? When you think about any of the players, like I have no issue with O'Hare, like looking at his options.
Right.
Why wouldn't you? Like you've got like 6 months, you've got literally 6 months to figure out your next move. And he's 26 now. You 25, 26, like massive decision. It's not disloyal to not tell us what you're doing right now or give us just spend some time figuring it out. It's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't for a moment think he's been disloyal. I just think it was quite bad planning from the club to sorry, I was slightly distracted. It was just that he just left. Something's happening.
It's fine. Carry on. The thing with O'Hare is that ultimately, if you really think about it, the thing to think is, what transfer fee could we have got for him if he was going to leave? But ultimately, what has his net sort of expenditure been? And apart from his wages, which everyone has, it's been zero. He joined us on a free. Like, it's not, in terms of, again, it would have been lovely to benefit the club by getting a huge amount of money for him, but that he's already done one sort of end of contract move. He's got every right to do another one. Like, it's about his value and it's about what he can do for the best of his career. And we've had 4 years of like what you would have to say on balance of as being a really, really good, positive player for the club. I know that some people have got sort of varying levels, about his output, but that he's been a player that has cost us nothing to sign, has presumably been reasonably low on wages for a good period of that time. And as much as it would be lovely to keep him at a period of time where he seems to have really found his feet in terms of goal scoring, you can't begrudge him personally for wanting the best out of his career. Ben Sheaf said it. I was joking earlier about the sort of mundanity about what he was saying about the Wolves game. But when they said to him, you play, is this an interesting opportunity to sort of prove yourself against Premier League opposition? The first thing he said is, well, yeah, of course, because that's where we all want to be. Yeah. And we're not there, and we're not likely to be there next season. And that I think it's only the same as, and nobody likes hearing this, it's only the same as working for Royal Mail and your boss saying to you, don't leave this job to go to Yodel or Every or whatever the equivalent is on more money, because next year you might be on the same money as what you're being offered now. No one in the world is going to take that. You don't care.
Yeah.
And then why should you? It's not incumbent on you to, in a really short career, where you really have high aspirations and can achieve something, why would you be supposed? And I as well don't think it's not disloyal, is it?
It's the transient nation of football, though. That's what gets me, and the way that we perceive people, or footballers, or fans perceive people. Sorry, I'm getting feedback.
That's okay. The only disloyal person in this world really is Laurie Kilpatrick. Formerly of this parish, disappeared for years, and I don't think we'll ever see him again or hear from him ever again. What was that?
What is this?
I'm here.
Oh, that's what it is. That's why I can hear myself.
Oh my God.
Could it be?
I'm ever so sorry, Laurie. You've missed. Sorry, go on, Laurie.
No, I'll say my piece about comparing postmen to footballers in a second. Do you carry on?
No. I mean, given that it's going to be such fucking exhilarating listen, why don't you say your piece about? Because I've made my point. Yours is clearly going to be a contrapoint. So why don't you tell me about how I've completely misjudged the situation?
No, I take your point to a certain extent, but raw male men or women, every time they go out and do their round, there aren't people like cheering their name and celebrating every time they deliver a package, is there? So I'd say there's some limitations to the analogy, but I do get the follow the cash. I obviously follow the cash, because it's like you and Neil would.
No, you're right, because if O'Hare joins, say, Fulham, for example, they won't cheer his name.
No, what?
Well, so you're saying that postmen don't get their name cheered or whatever. So that, like, if you were to join another post company, they still don't cheer your name. Whereas at Cov, they'll cheer his name, but presumably they won't then at another club. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that you build up this like air of like loyalty, or at least like you're part of like a family, because there's something unique about having a fan base follow your progress. So I think to compare it to any other job where you just show up, you leave, and no one really cares that you come or go, being a footballer is a bit different, because...
But isn't the reverse of that?
By the way, sorry, Neil. By the way, brilliant job of understanding the point that I was making there. You're right. What I was saying was, it doesn't matter at all whether footballers move freely, basically eradicate transfer fees and contracts. Let's just have an anarchist system of football where we all just move freely to and fro, because it doesn't matter.
That's what you want.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Is that what you'd like?
No, I think that's what you think I'm saying. Do you know what? You've been here for 3 minutes. You've ruined everything that we've done so far. Let's welcome Laurie, guys. Laurie has joined us an hour and 8 minutes into this podcast, but it's lovely to have you.
Sorry, I pressed the no camera button because I just assumed this would be a no camera thing, but now I can't change it apparently. So sorry.
Yeah, it's good. I don't want to see your face. Tell me about, Laurie, your resounding moment, your favourite thing about the Wolves game before we carry on.
So I've actually rounded this up this morning as I finally got my response from the pub in Bath where I was watching it. I had to send them a complaint email on Saturday.
It's honest to God, it's so difficult listening to you.
Had to. Because this is what happened. This is what happens when you go to the West Country. We were watching a pub. We were already having like pretty average time because we had 4 children with us under the age of 4, and that comes with its own limitations. And it got to the 92nd minute. Obviously, we're losing, and there's all these kind of like rugby lads like frothing for the Six Nations or whatever was happening. They're all like, "Can we sit in your seat?" And you're like, "You can sit in my seat, mate, when the game's over, when I'm gone. asked me in 4 minutes time. So I then look extremely stupid when the powers that be just switch the game off to the rugby. I then have my partner and baby, and I'm like obviously extremely angry. And my partner is like, just grow up, the game's over, you've lost. And I was like, we haven't lost. There's another good 10 minutes. You're not au fait with the extended periods of added time that have come in over the past 18 months. She wasn't. So I like begrudgingly pick up my baby, walk out of the door of the pub, turn on Radio 5 Live. As I'm walking out the door, we equalise, hand baby back to partner, run into pub, have a go at the barmaid being like, you turned off the football, we've just equalised, you've ruined my day, but also trying to be very happy at the same time.
Yeah.
I then go back outside, Radio 5 Live still on. I try and like show my partner that she was wrong and that she should apologise. While I'm in the middle of that, we score again, and then I'm celebrating in the street as it starts to rain, surrounded by children, and just so angry but so happy, so confused. And yeah, I think that's going to be the background to watching COF for me for the next few years. But it was unreal.
How dare they turn it over?
Then I had to write the email.
Yeah, of course.
It's really disgustingly like what you've done there is described a kind of spec script for a Richard Curtis film about football.
Honestly, that is not on, is it? The rugby players were warming up. It was like 40 minutes until the game started. No one was there being like, change the channel. There were people watching. I spent good money on that pub.
I sometimes wonder more generally about kind of our group of podcasters, whether sort of we're a bit too sort of middle class and that we don't have... and then you come on and you're like, oh, they weren't au fait with the correct etiquette. And I'm like,
sorry, it doesn't matter how you butter your bread. If you can't turn off a football game in the 92nd minute of a quarterfinal when there's one goal in it, that's like these rugby fans, presumably they watched us win the World Cup. They know that stuff happens in the last 30 seconds of games.
I think they were...
I can't believe you're still on their side, Joey.
How did they do it? Did they do it?
On my side?
I'm not. We've talked about this before. I'm always opposite to whatever side you're on, just as a kind of standard point. So whilst I'm not inherently on their side, if they were against you, I have to hear them out.
You're the leader of the opposition, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Although it was delightful to
steal all my policies.
Yeah, it was delightful to hear that your baby did a big shit on you earlier. I'm going to sort of wrestle this back to football. I must confess, Imogen, that I don't remember exactly where we were with the game. I think we were talking about Dennis Lawrence having departed.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think
he's not dead, by the way. But
no, he hasn't shuffled off this mortal coil. He's just gone to Minnesota.
Yeah,
which good luck. Go with Jesus.
Isn't that where Fargo is?
No, but if you could stop inputting, be fabulous. Yeah. So Lawrence is gone, but everything else is fabulous. Imogen,
everything else is great. And then we got United in the draw.
There we go.
Delicious. I think the best of the three.
Yeah, 100%.
Controversially.
I'm all right with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
I think Chelsea are a more chaotic team.
Do you? Interesting.
Yeah, I feel they're flakier than United. I think watching the way they came back against Liverpool, I think some of the players they've got around at the moment, like Garnacho, and like Mino, and just feeling they're sort of really persistent. I think where I think if we can nick ahead against them, I think they're really going to go at it. Whereas I think if we went ahead against Chelsea, they'd lose their brains.
Would you indulge me to, very as quickly as I can, sort of tell you why I think it's United that I would have wanted?
Yeah.
So I think if things stay the way that they are, I think that they will beat us 2-0 and that will be that. But I think there are potential circumstances in which they may end up being the better opponent than Chelsea. Because I agree with you that as it stands, I think Chelsea probably would be our better. Admittedly, it's low yield no matter what it is. But I think there are circumstances in which United could all of a sudden rally. Bear in mind that Højlund's back fit, and they've got a handful of players now that seem to be in reasonable form. Mainu, Garnacho that you've mentioned before. And if City get past Real Madrid, which I think might happen before we're due, I think we might know who they will be a semi-finalist before. I think that that could possibly buy us that 5th Champions League spot. If City win and Liverpool win, I think that might get us that 5th Champions League spot. If United rally, they may well be looking more at that Champions League spot than they would do for the getting through in the Cup. But I think more importantly and more realistically, I think they will continue to decline. And I think that squad is full of players who will see getting rid of Erik ten Hag as more of a priority than big success this season. I think, bear in mind, I'm talking about low percentage likelihood here, but in terms of what we've got against us is we're currently, I guess, we're like, what would you say? I mean, I don't know betting odds terribly well, but it's got to be like 90% likelihood of United getting through, 10% us, right? Which for a two-sided betting outcome is very, very high. Maybe it's a little bit lower than that, but it's got to be somewhere near that. But there are things that could swing this in favour for us that might go ahead. And even if that was the case in that quite extreme scenario, probably only gives us another 20% maybe. But if you're going 70-30 on a bet, it's not that implausible, is it? And I think especially with the players that they have in that squad that are capable of blowing up I really love Rashford's potential. I think his highest points as a player is he's an absolutely terrific player. But if you watch him this season, he's been fucking awful. And that Fernandes has been completely impotent this season because he's got nobody to do anything around him. And he's not scoring enough himself. I think there's lots of reasons to think that a very confident, very sort of front-footed Coventry side might not be as big as a pushover as people might think. And I know. Do you
remember what Wolves did to Man United? Or Man United did to Wolves this season?
So at the start of the very first game of the season when they won 1-0.
Well, more to the point, Man United won 4-3 in the last minute at Wolves. That sounds quite familiar, doesn't it?
What, away recently?
Away recently.
Okay, well, but no, I don't.
Well, they got the same result as us at the same team. Admittedly, Wolves had injuries when they played us, but Wolves aren't that much worse than United are this season in the Prem. I just don't think. I think 70-30 that's actually not a bad representation of what we're going into this with. I agree with Dom. I think Garnacho scares the crap out of me, and players like that. But I also kind of think this is how ahead of myself I'm getting. I think Chelsea have a better chance of beating Man City than Man United do. So wouldn't you quite like Chelsea in the final?
But before I ask someone else's opinion very quickly, I got, as much as I would love more death threats after the sort of pessimism of last season against Luton, and as counterintuitive as it is to feel like we would inevitably get beaten by them, which by the way we did, versus sort of a semi-level of confidence against Man United, it's about the kind of what it overall means. If we lose against Man United, we're meant to. And as well is that we have the money from the FA Cup semi being at Wembley that will be a huge boost to us. If we lose that game, the stakes are absolutely meaningless because outside of what would be a terrific day out in a final and the money involved and possibly winning the FA Cup in ludicrously low likelihood circumstances, you know, it's not everything compared to the kind of realistic nature of being able to beat Luton in a playoff final. We are completely in a win-win situation here. Even if we get tonked 8-0 by United, it will just go down as a win for United that was kind of meant to happen. The money will be in the bank. We'll have had a great day out. There's no expectation. But actually, it's not like we're playing Man City or we're playing Liverpool where you just go, I don't see a version of this where we can come through. I don't see us coming through, but I do see a version of it where we can come through. Neil, do you see a version of it where we can come through?
My main thing I took from all of that is the game is in a month's time, and the fact that you were saying, like, what does a month's time look like? Nobody knows what that's going to be, and like stuff is going to happen to them, stuff's going to happen to us, stuff's going to happen to Chelsea in that month, which means, you know, you never really get a feel about a match until like the day before or like the day of, because you've seen what your team's been playing with, and half the time that's wrong anyway. So this one, like, we've got months time to go. Like, who knows? Like, if we've gone into it in a good run of form and they're having a really shit time, something, you know, that can happen any given game. If they lose their next game 3-0, everybody's going to be on their back again because it's Man United and they always are. It reminds me a little bit of, like, we all know like the Second Tier podcast, but they did a thing recently where they were talking about, I wouldn't want to play West Brom in the playoffs. The playoffs are fucking 2 months away. Like, who knows? You can't pick a team at this moment in time about an event that's going to happen in 2 months' time. It just doesn't work like that. The only thing that's relevant is like within the day or two before that, how things are going. So, I mean, that wasn't what you asked me, but as I was listening to that, I was like, I can't fathom anything. I can see a day of us winning it, but ask me, you know, in a day beforehand how I feel about it, and then we'll have a better idea of like whether United are a strong team. If they win the next 4 games beforehand, then they're a completely different proposition.
But I'm saying, so I agree with you. I'm saying, even if they do win the next 4 games, they might be in 4.
Oh yeah, but that's fine as well, isn't it? That's kind of. That's
this is what I mean. But that's exactly what I'm saying. Is at that point, if you've got Jim Ratcliffe being like, you know, we need to make sure that we get that 4th position, or we need to get that 5th position. Like this, an FA Cup semi-final for us isn't the be-all and end-all in a season where we definitely get beaten by, like, for them, it's like finances and everything else. I just think no matter what happens for us, it's good. I just think if we get, do you remember Watford getting absolutely smashed up by Man City?
I was just thinking about that. Yeah.
I just think I think that scoreline flattered Watford, but I still think to some extent, if you're a Watford fan coming out of that game, as much as the game must have been dispiriting, you must still come out of it and go, we have had, what a brilliant run that has been. Like, we never meant to, and I'm glad that I got to watch Man City at the peak of their powers.
6.
And I think it was 6, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 6. And I was actually talking to a Watford fan last night who said exactly that. And I didn't even view it as an embarrassment, because of course City were going to smack them. That was like it, and what?
Oh, and it was wild how good they were that day. Like, it just was, so
so what? That's not. I mean, for an FA Cup, that's not why you don't go for, if you're Watford and you're drawn against Man City, you're not going expecting to win. You just have a good day out, and that's what, with the stakes being so much lower, I think it's actually going to be a joy going to Wembley and thinking, well, fuck it. If we get spanked, and we, you know,
I
disagree, Neil. I disagree. Mate, it was not fun.
I wonder as well.
I thought it was great
with like the kind of, and I know this is a bit maybe silly. So I live in Manchester, obviously, or sort of used to live in Manchester and live very close now. I know a lot of Man United fans that, as pathetic as this is, as soon as we got drawn against them, I went through my phone book and texted almost every single Man United fan that I know, fuck you and fuck your stupid club. So, but every single person that replied said, like, I'm worried. And obviously there's a bit of kind of like magnanimity about that, but that, like, I think we go there in like crazy full voice optimism straight away. I think they go there a bit worried. I think that no matter what happens and the circumstances around it, I think they see this as like us playing. Like, I think it's really nice that we scored so early against Maidstone. If I'm a Man United fan at Wembley, I'm like, this can't really go well for us. If we win this 4-0, we were meant to, but like we're not playing well. Things aren't going well for us. Like, this could fuck us up.
I think if you look back as like captain hindsight after we've beaten them, a Man United fan or people be like, that was actually written in the script for Erik ten Hag to lose an embarrassing semi-final against a championship team, being like, we should have seen that coming. Like, that is actually perfect for this year. And then it'll be like, right, you can fuck off now, mate. Like, we're done with you. And you don't get 5th place. Like, it is sort of all teed up to be kind of perfect for us.
But do you think they replace him with Robbins? Because that would be heartbreaking.
Caretakers at the end of the season.
The BBC gossip column today, sometimes it's interesting to do a sort of gauge of could Man United fall any lower than this based on sort of things that you've seen. The BBC gossip column, which I know is bullshit, but it said Jim Ratcliffe is currently considering Graham Potter, Gary O'Neill, or I can't remember who the third person was. You kind of thought, I don't know, is that not really the level to which Gary O'Neill's done a fantastic job at Wolves, but
he's not ready for Man United.
You think, if that's the caliber of manager that you're going for, like, it's got to be worth a go. But I agree with you about Chelsea. Chelsea's got similar basket case similarity.
They are lower in the table than Wolves, who we just beat.
Yeah, but then equally is, I think, if they hadn't have tired out in the post 90th minute against Liverpool in the League Cup final, they should have that should have been there, shouldn't it? The narrative about that game was Liverpool's kids seeing them through, but I sort of think it was just Chelsea tired and they just wanted to get the penalty shootouts and they weren't able to do it, were they?
Mm-hmm.
Right, okay, so I think that's probably enough, possibly, of everything. What do we think?
I think it's been a lovely recap. Nice to go through it again.
I think
Did you talk about the league?
No, I don't think so.
We can do.
Go on then, Laurie.
Concentrate on the cup. It's going to be our motto this year.
Is there anything glaring that we feel like we haven't talked about the league at all, Laurie? Seeing as you've been there every week, maybe you can.
Joey, there's no need to rub my face in it that I now can't attend as many games as I used to, but I've done my hard yards going to conf games. I now.
That's not how it works. You know that.
It won't be
have to
reflected
keep
in your
coming
loyalty
back every
points.
season.
No, those days are gone.
I just have to grub around for tickets now, like an absolute bottom feeder. But what are you going to do?
I know I sort of briefly touched on it earlier, but if we are going to look at things that have happened since we last recorded, I would like to ask a question of all of you around kind of thoughts on Sakamoto particularly. I do feel like I'm somewhat islanded in my opinion of him, that he's, I mean, not quite Gyökeres or Hamer, but I just think and I'm also conscious that he is exactly the sort of player that I like a very, very, very industrious and also sort of very numerically adept attacking player. But that, am I alone in this? I think he's absolutely terrific.
I think the fact that we are a different version of ourselves when he's not in that team is pretty stark. Like we can play around with the team, and you know we've interchanged between Palmer and O'Hare quite a lot this season, and we've still been able to do similar things. But the fact that we almost can't function in the same way at all without him on that right hand side is kind of testament just to kind of what he then brought to it. And he was so sort of rigid in being that right winger, like he very supportive of Van Avaak, but just sticking on that wing and keeping that sort of consistent shape. That period over Christmas where we were scoring like 2 goals a game, 3 goals, beating teams away, where you just had right on the left, him on the on the right. It was just everything that you kind of a really attacking sort of frenzy of football from us, and him. It just, and even when he's quiet, like I don't mind at all. Like other players get grief for not being in the game, but it's like I don't mind him being quiet because when he does get the ball, we all get really excited. I mean, I can't remember a player who has got like the crowd at the CBS sort of whooping every time he gets the ball. Every time he does that same, we all know exactly. It's still we predict it. We all know it's going to happen, and yet you will not stop it. You will not stop this man because will he do it twice? Will he do it 3 times? You just don't know, and he's mega.
But I also don't think, right, so I'm absolutely obsessed with this sort of guesswork that I've got in my own head, that Robbins is trying to coach the cut inside onto your right out of Haji Wright. So in the last 2 months, if you look at how often it happens compared to how often it happened previously, it's completely like, it's almost completely gone out of his game, even from the left. And I don't understand why, because it's so effective. And that Sakamoto, that move is like, who was it that, in the commentary of the Wolves game, is someone, I think Peter Drury, talked about possibly, it was Aït-Nouri cut inside and hit a shot off his right and it went wide. And that Peter Drury sort of made like a sort of jokey comment about how one-footed he is. And then Ali McCoy was like, yeah, but there have been quite a few good players that have been entirely one-footed, right? And I don't think that a footballer having a move like makes them any easier to deal with based on the fact that you know that they're going to do it. So do you think any player knew that Frank Lampard wasn't going to arrive on the edge of the box? Or do you think that they don't know that Sakamoto is going to do that, or that Wright's going to move inside?
Yeah.
But if you're really good at it, I need you to be really good at dealing with it. And that, like this, throughout history, even at every level, it doesn't really matter whether you, like, if as long as you're good enough at it for your level, you need to find someone who's going to be able to deal with it. Sakamoto does it over and over again. That thing of being like, no, you're right. But I haven't seen anybody
to deal with it. You have to go and try and block a cross that isn't going to come. Like you even let them, and if you don't set yourself, he's just going to cross it. So you are screwed as a defender. You really are.
I don't think it's problematic unless it doesn't work. And the classic example for me is David Ball.
Oh, nobody thinks it. Yeah,
beating a player by shifting the ball onto his left and then shanking a ball out of play with his left foot. That hasn't worked, right? You've beat the player, but it hasn't worked ultimately. But they're like, right, cutting in, like all of his goals. I think it's really telling for me that goal, I don't think, like we were joking about me celebrating, it wasn't a joke, I really did celebrate Palmer's goal. But that as soon as he hit it, on his right foot, in that position, in the kind of sort of pseudo Thierry Henry position of kind of like trying to bend it in the corner, it's going in. That's like,
he was supposed to mention that he did cut on into his right 2 or 3 times in the same game, didn't he, against Wolves? So maybe he's been allowed to do that again.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, but that's not the point I'm trying to make now.
No.
All right. Fair dues. Okay, right. Well, that's my final kind of input onto this. Anything about sort of practically about the game or whatever else? No. Again, I would like Imogen to go to you first as a sort of vibes correspondent. I would like to get a little bit from the 4 of you about how you feel going into the game at this point in time of the 21st of March, a month away.
I can't wait. I don't know how we're going to do a month. I don't care about the league. I think we fuck playoffs anyway. So I'm all about every energy going into beating United. And I think we do it.
Beautiful. Dom?
Yeah, I'm looking forward. Just looking forward to just seeing us on the really big stage. We've done Wembley before, but we've not really done Wembley against a huge team with the whole world watching. And that the whole world is going to see that sea of sky blue behind that goal, that's going to be special to see.
Neil?
Yeah, all in. Any given day. It'll be just be a good day all round, I think. And like you say, I like us being exposed to, that sort of level of match. I mean, the Luton one had an element of it just because it was the championship final, so you could see a lot of people watching. But yeah, this is a big deal. So it is kind of win-win because I think we'll enjoy it. It's always nice to see more people and see us all have a good day of it. And the only bad thing about it is just how fucking expensive it is. But other than that, we should have a good time.
Well, and we don't know for definite even what day it is yet.
Yeah, we got a month. We'll be fine.
Yeah,
we're all going, right?
Yeah, of course.
Oh,
yeah.
apart from
Dom,
Japanese Samuel. Yeah.
Oh God.
To be fair, is what it is. I guess the holiday of your life versus the, and to be fair as well, when you were looking through the football fixture list calendar, I guess you're not like
cross that one off.
You're back for the final day, Dom, right?
Yeah.
Oh, fine.
Yeah,
Don't worry about it. See you there.
This is not yeah. I mean, yeah, Japan away is probably a better version of this than Wembley.
Yeah.
Laurie, what fucking nonsense bullshit have you got to say about what you're gonna? The thing for you will be about the cycle there rather than the game itself, or
well, the way I measure these things is on the caliber freak.
The way I measure these things. Why have we let you?
The caliber of freak who texts me after or during the game. And so when we got during the Luton game, I got a text off an old colleague from about 6 years ago who I didn't like, who just texted me about losing. And I also got a message off a teacher from sixth form who was a Luton fan. And I was like, all right, that's quite weird. On Saturday, I got a text from someone I went to primary school with who I haven't seen since I was 9. I was actually a bit disarmed that he'd found my number or had my contact details, texting me about it, being like, are you going to the semi? I'm a United fan. And I was like, that is we are big time. I'm getting a text off Luke from year 5. That is huge. So fair play, Mark Robbins. You've completed the last Horcrux. You've got us to an FA Cup. It's almost like he's bored of the league now. He wants us to have everything. So he's given us the FA Cup semi-final. Thank you, Mark. That's how I feel about it, Joey. Sorry.
You've reminded me of something very quickly, is that in an incredible kind of confirmation bias version of what you expect Man United fans to be like, before I'd even texted the majority of people that I know that are Man United fans saying fuck off, a load of them texted me to say, can you get tickets for the game? In an astonishing bout of kind of misunderstanding about the way
that is so true.
Works.
That's so true.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. I got a text from my brother-in-law, these patronizing Premiership dicks, being like, "Oh mate, you'll probably have a few spares. Could I come along with you?" I'll be like, "Do you understand our fan base? You have no idea." I would consider myself a pretty big fan of Cov, and I'm scared I won't get a ticket. The likelihood, if he's listening, he won't be, but I'm sorry, Harry. The likelihood I bring an Arsenal fan into my home end at Wembley, you must be smoking crack. I'd rather have an empty seat.
I've got my United fans being like, you seem to be quite a big Cov fan. Can you get me United tickets? I'm like, I don't. well, I'm not. Yeah, again, I haven't been enough recently to be like anything other than worried about my own ticket. So I'd suggest you speak to someone who might be a United fan rather than. As well, I don't know how you feel about this. I was like, I could push if I was offered £1 million to try and procure a ticket. I could probably do it under the circumstances, but I don't think I'd want to try and put a United fan in the Cov end. I'm not saying that we're some sort of like violent maniacs or whatever, but if you were the sort of person that celebrated a goal even slightly in it, I do think you'd get your head kicked in.
Wembley.
Yeah, do you reckon?
Well, I just think
celebrated goals in home ends before, and to be honest, people are just more surprised than anything.
I think it's going to be a 5:30 kickoff. And I think that we're going to be, as a fan base, much more drunk than we have been for any of the previous Wembley
Seems
trips.
impossible, man. Everybody's...
Which is, well, I know, exactly, yeah. And I think it's going to be... if you were, there in your United shirt, being like, yay! I think you might be in trouble. Right, okay. It's been a pleasure. To the listeners, we've been away for a while, and... what are you going to do?
I get promises.
And that's why.
But we've done this, and, we might do something beforehand, or we might do something afterwards, and we might not. But I hope you've enjoyed this, and that's all we've got to say about that, quite frankly. Thank you, Neil.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dom.
Cheers. Good to be on.
Thank you, Imogen.
Pleasure, Joey.
Laurie, you were here as well.
Thank you. Very special.
We hopefully will be back before the game, but if we're not, then play up Sky Blues. Bye.